Welcome to Author Talk with Richard Lowe, and I'm with Suzanna JLinton, who's a fantasy and urban fantasy author. Her latest novel, Secret Burdens, came out in July 2018. It is the third book of the Stories of Lorst series. Suzanna, what is your story?
Well, I grew up in a kind of a very oral culture of storytelling and storytellers. And so I grew up hearing stories and reading. My mother was a big reader, so I was always surrounded by her books. And that sort of spilled out in me telling my own stories. But I didn't really think about becoming an author until I read Anne McCaffrey's Dragonflight in high school. And I was so stunned by the world she built and the characters and everything that I thought, I want to be a writer too. I want to create worlds like that and share that with people. And so that's sort of where it started for me.
Yeah, I've read those books. They were fantastic.
They really are, yeah.
What about them intrigued you?
I like the fact that the main character, Lisa, was not likable. Like, she had her own kind of selfish agenda, and part of the story arc was her learning how to put the needs of others beyond her own and how to open herself out of her shell. And then the dragons themselves were fascinating, and the relationship between the dragon and the dragon rider and just the whole society, because it was so different from what I was used to and growing up with. And those were like the three big things for me.
She does have a very rich world, and you touched upon a subject that's dear to my heart, is character arcs. I've found that good stories have characters that grow through the novel, which is a character arc, whereas poor stories tend to be plot-driven instead of character-driven. Do you find that's true?
Yeah, I do. I think that there's a place for plot-driven work. That that can still be enjoyed, but I prefer character-driven. I believe that my work is more character-driven because I think that's where you start when you're writing. You start with your character. Whenever I come up with a new idea for a novel or a story or something, I always start with the voice of the character and what's their journey, what's their struggle, and then the rest of the problem kind of builds around that.
I see. Do you find yourself where the characters take over your story?
Sometimes it's usually the character. Sometimes there's a battle. I don't know how to talk. I don't know how to talk about this without giving away some of the plot of Secret Burdens. But there was an issue that I wasn't listening to the character, and I was having trouble writing Secret Burdens. And then I realized that I was not letting my character take over and go in a certain direction. I was trying to force it. And when I let my character go, I was able to finish the novel and write it more easily.
Yeah, I understand. Sometimes I write and I want to go in one direction and the character seems to want to go in another, and it just causes the writing to become awful until I fix that.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, that's interesting. And why did you choose fantasy as opposed to any other genre?
Because I can make my own rules and I don't have to worry about getting a letter or an email or something from somebody saying, oh, you got this wrong. I mean, I can still get that, especially since I deal with horses and armor and fighting and stuff like that. So there is some basis in reality, but I can use that as a framework and kind of just build around it. And it just feels like a safer environment. Now, I have written one novel that takes place partially in the real world, but I didn't stay there very long, and I kind of just branched out from there. But I just feel like it's a bigger playground, so to speak.
You get to make your own rules.
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting, and your own world.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
How do you go about world building?
I usually, again, I start with the character, and then I kind of try to imagine what sort of world do I want to place them in. It's not usually a conscious thing. My world building responds to the needs of the plot. Like if I need a certain religion to feed into the plot, I'll create that religion. Or if I need a certain political structure or something like that, it's usually as I write the novel that I create the world that it fits in.
I see. So you don't sit down and create the entire world before you start,
No, not usually. No.
or define all the characters in detail before you start.
No, not usually. No.
I see. Do you do an outline before you start?
Yes. If I know it's gonna, for Secret Burdens I did because it's a big complicated plot with a lot of moving parts, and so I sat down and I worked out what my conflict was, who were gonna be my players, what were my subplots that I wanted, and just sort of came up with a loose outline. I don't like to make a hard and fast outline. I leave myself room to do my own thing and let the characters respond and let, I guess, try and be organic is what I'm trying to say.
I understand. Yes, there's a term for that. I think it's called a pantster. So there's plotters and pantsters. I tend to be a pantster as well.
Yeah, and then there's in between, and I'm developing into more of an in between kind of writer.
I understand. And why did you write this particular book?
Well, I wanted to continue the series, obviously, but I also wanted to delve into a mind of a different character. The first two books revolve around Clara, and she's important, naturally, but the third book I wanted to talk about this other character who was having his own issues that I really started to notice in Clara's Return, the second book. And I thought it would be really interesting for me to A, write from a man's point of view, B, to deal with the concept of honor and lost honor, and how do you recover that? How do you feel comfortable again in your own skin? How do you get your integrity back? And I just wanted a different voice, because I call it the Stories of Lorst because it's set up so that we're going to have stories from different characters and different things going on in the kingdom,
Mm-hmm.
and I thought this would be a good starting point for that.
Okay, well that makes sense. And how many other books have you written and published?
I've written and published 4 total. There's the 3 books in the Stories of Lorst, and then there's the 1 book in the Lands of Sun and Stone series, which is my urban fantasy-ish novel. That so far there's just that one novel in that series.
I see, and you plan to make it a longer series, obviously.
One day when I can get the characters to behave and respond and I can, write it out. Yeah.
I understand. Well, okay, good. It sounds like you're very productive. What do you do to stay productive?
I usually decide that, hey, I'm gonna start writing, and I try not to put it off too much, and I try to give myself something of a break in between projects, and I use NaNoWriMo, National Novel Writing Month. I use that if I feel like I need an extra push. And I think Clara was actually written over NaNoWriMo, and I think Willows of Fate, which is the first book of this Lands of Sun and Stone series, I think that was written over a Nano as well. So I like to use that and to use community to kind of keep myself going.
And how do you use a community to keep yourself going? That's an interesting point.
Well, Twitter. I take part in some Twitter chats sometimes, and which is where a lot of people get together under the same hashtag and we answer questions and talk. I'm friends with my editor, and I bounce ideas off my editor sometimes, and I have friends in the real world who who I talk to and who help me with things, and just I surround myself with writers, essentially. It's writers and people who want to be writers and things like that.
Okay, maybe you can send me some of those hashtags after the interview, and we can
Okay.
link to them so others can take advantage if you want. Okay, good. And what do you do when you don't feel like writing, but you know you need to write?
I do fan fiction. I write fan fiction on occasion. Sometimes I'll take part in role playing online, which is where you kind of tell a story with you and a partner, and go back and forth on that. Sometimes I'll write poetry, and then all else fails, I'll read a book.
I see. So you don't, it sounds like you don't suffer from writer's block very much, and you have a solution if you do.
I don't like the term writer's block. It's to me, writer's block or what is called writer's block is really fear. You're afraid of something. So it's either you're afraid of your own story, that you're afraid that it won't be good or that you won't write it well, or you're afraid of the work it's going to take, or you're afraid of a particular plot point, or there's some form of fear stopping you. And once you recognize that fear and make a plan or make a resolution to overcome it, then you can bypass the block. Yeah.
Okay, well that makes sense. That makes sense. So if for the writers out there, what would you tell them so that they succeed as well as you have?
I tell them not to give up, to not expect an overnight success. I was telling somebody the other day that writing is the long game, publishing is the long game. I was recently at an event trying to sell my books, and I didn't sell a single book. But what I did do was I handed out a lot of my business cards, and I talked to people. So that person might go home and look up my books online and see that Claro is free as an ebook on the, on Amazon or Kobo or whatever. Or they give my card to somebody else that they know likes to read fantasy. So it's a long game. You have to keep in mind the fact that it's going to take a while and to not let yourself get too discouraged. I also suggest if you do get published, don't pay too much attention to your reviews. Your reviews are not for you. They're for potential readers. So don't treat them like they're writing critiques, because they're not. And I would say surround yourself with other writers. Have buddies, have people that uplift you and help you to grow.
Yeah, I found that's especially important because as a writer, I sit here and stare at a computer screen all day long.
Yeah, writing is a solitary profession, but it doesn't have to be all the time. You need to interact with people. You can't write in a vacuum.
Yes, and I found also just getting out to writing critique groups that are not near my computer screen also helps. Do you use writing critique groups at all?
I did for a while, and then I kind of dropped out of it, but I'm trying to get back into another writing critique group now, but I have used them in the past, and I found them to be very helpful.
Yeah, I actually started one years ago. I let it fade, but for science fiction, it was pretty useful. All right. What other kinds of tips would you have for writers who are going to go the self-published route?
Research.
And what do you mean by that?
Well, don't just throw yourself into it. That was the mistake I made. I published Clara without really understanding what I was doing, and I made a mess of it at first, and I've been catching up with the learning ever since. So you should learn about what all goes into creating a successful book launch, a successful self-publishing career. Create your platform before you publish, and the platform is exactly what it sounds like. It's where you stand and shout into the world, and hopefully somebody hears you, and where you make connections and networking. So get on Twitter, maybe start a blog if you feel like that's something you would do well, and I would also highly recommend that you find an editor. Somebody to look at your work and to evaluate it and give you any revision points. Those are the ones that come to mind. And also don't create your cover art in Photoshop, because that's what I did. Don't do it. Hire somebody.
Yeah, I learned that lesson the hard way. Hire a professional cover person, because even just the font face can make a big difference in sales.
Definitely.
Or not putting the shadow on, or the shadow on the font, huge difference. It was amazing to me. How do you get your covers made?
I go through Fiona Jade Media. Fiona is a wonderful artist. I believe she lives out in California, and she's done all my covers, and she's really easy to work with, and she's a wonderful artist. I've actually had somebody say about my book Willows of Fate, the plot's okay is what the reviewer said. Buy it for the cover.
That's funny. If you could send me a link to her site, I'll put that in the description also. Definitely. Might as well give her a little publicity too. All right. Well, speaking of publicity, this is the elephant in the room I found with every single writer is how do they promote their books. It's something that writers don't tend to be good at, I guess, or they don't want to do it, or whatever the block is. And everybody wants to know, how do I get my books out there? What do you do?
Well, I've been doing more marketing lately than I have in the past. One thing I do is I do giveaways. What's the name of the site? My brain is blanking on me. But find websites that do giveaways. I would not suggest Insta Freebie because there's some issues with that with newsletters. But I've done Amazon ads, which I've had some success in. There is some good tutorials you can find, like Kindlepreneur, like entrepreneur, but you drop the entre part, and there's Kindlepreneur has a good tutorial on how to do Amazon ads. Facebook ads, if you do it right, can be helpful. I've also done, I found online PR companies that I've had limited success with. It just depends on them. And I would suggest staying away from blog tours because that market is so saturated. I mean, you can try it if you find a blog tour that's cheap enough, but also keep in mind you're getting what you pay for at the same time. And word of mouth also, and doing contests every now and again has been helpful, and newsletter swaps. Have a newsletter and do newsletter swaps.
Explain what a newsletter swap is.
A newsletter swap is when you, I go through a cross promo group on Facebook with a lot of mine, and what it is somebody says, okay, I need somebody or some people to feature my book on these dates, and you pop in and say, oh, I have a newsletter coming out that date. I'll feature yours, but here's my book that I want you to feature in your newsletter. So you're essentially swapping dates.
I see.
How that works. Yeah.
Okay. And that Facebook group is called?
Sci-Fi Fantasy Cross Promo, I believe is what it's called. Yeah.
And there's other ones, I'm sure.
Yeah, there are others. Yeah.
Good. Excellent. Yeah, I've tried blog tours myself, and they were disappointing.
Yeah.
They're expensive. They take a long time to set up, and I haven't found them to be useful.
Yeah, it's just oversaturated because what a lot of those book blogs do is that's all they do. So their sites tend just to be crammed with one blog tour after another. And I've noticed that a lot of those blog sites tend to be very poorly put together, and they're not visually pleasing. Not all of them, mine, but some of them. And I just think it's gotten to the point now where it's almost spam. Mm-hmm. So when I have used blog tour sites, because a lot of blog tour companies will offer what they call review tours, where they find bloggers to review books, and I've used those just to try and gain some reviews. But I don't do any more than that with it.
Interesting, yes. Now, something that I found is building a connection with my audience is what brings me sales. Do you find that true as well?
Yeah, I do. And cultivating my fans, because they'll help spread the word as well, and help you get people interested in your books. That's why I like Twitter, because Twitter and Instagram too kind of invite the reader into my life. Though Twitter tends to be a little bit more writing based, my Instagram is more personal based, mm-hmm. But it invites my readers to come and see what a day is like in my life, that sort of thing.
I see. That would be interesting to look at. So you're also promoting yourself as well as your books.
Yeah, because one mistake I've noticed some people make is that they make their first book their brand. Like they'll make a Twitter page, and the Twitter page, the username is like the title of the book or has something to do with the book. But that's not your platform, because that's just your first book. Your name is your brand. Okay. And you kind of have to build your platform, build your everything around your name and you, because that's what's long-lasting. That's what's going to be around and continue, if that makes sense.
It makes total sense. Yeah. So your platform would be your name or your company name or maybe your series if that was your...
Well, I wouldn't do series because ideally you want to write more than one series. So it would be, or your pen name, if you have a pen name,
Okay.
is what you would build around.
Good, good. And do you use pen names?
I would, so yes and no. My Suzanna JLinton is sort of a pen name because it's part of my legal name, but you could still, Google me and find me and probably find my personal Facebook using that. So I don't know if it would really be considered a pen name. I did have a pen name for a little bit because I was writing some nonfiction religious-oriented stuff that I don't write anymore. But I don't have that anymore. So.
Okay, okay. And what social media platforms do you use besides Twitter and Instagram to promote yourself?
Facebook. I use Facebook. I'm not too heavy into Facebook, but I am there. And I do have a LinkedIn profile, but I don't really see anything that comes out of it. And every now and again, I'll get a ping off of Tumblr because I have a Tumblr page, but I don't really do much there. So my focus is mainly Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook.
Yeah, I haven't actually found Twitter to be that useful in building an audience, but maybe I just don't know how to use it. Is there any special techniques you use?
Well, I've only noticed recently that I've started gaining followers who are readers or could be readers, because you can never really quite be sure. Just might be some random person who liked your page for some reason. But I found that Twitter is, you can't negate that possibility of gaining readers through Twitter, but it's mostly for networking with other writers. But I kind of leave it open to connect with other readers. I have some fans that'll talk to me on Twitter and respond to things I post. So.
And of course, email.
I don't get fan mail through email, so no. I have yet to get that.
Okay.
Well, actually, I have a couple, but not recently. Not recently.
So blog tours are out. Facebook ads, you need to work hard to make them work right and need to understand them, or you're just going to be pouring money away.
Yeah.
Amazon ads seem to work for you.
Yes. You have the keywords are really important. There is this program out there that's supposed to give you a list of keywords. I can't remember what it's called, and a friend of mine let me use her copy, and I had limited success with the words that auto-generated for me. But it's important to have a lot. You have to come up with a lot of keywords for Amazon ads, and you should add to them every day or every couple of times a week, because you need to have a diverse set of keywords so that your it improves chances of somebody plugging in the right combination and find your book, essentially.
Is that product KDP Rocket?
Yes, that's it, KDP Rocket.
I've used it as well, and I've had some good success with it. So I'm just mentioning it. Good. Yeah, KDP Rocket's not very expensive, and it seems to work. And again, you have to pick the right keywords.
Yeah, exactly.
All it does is give you a bunch, and then you get to choose the ones that work or not.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What is your favorite thing about being an author?
The fact that I get to create worlds and characters and explore ideas that I wouldn't be able to in the real world, and just the creative aspect is really my favorite part of it.
I see. And are you a full-time writer, or do you have a job on the side?
I'm a full-time writer.
So you make your whole living off of writing.
Well, let me put it this way. If it wasn't for my husband's job, I'd probably be living in a cardboard box in a park somewhere. So.
Okay. So you're making money as a writer, but it wouldn't pay bills, right?
It's not like a living wage, but I am making money, yeah.
Okay, good. That makes sense. But you're definitely seeing results from your writing, and you're happy with those results.
Yeah.
Yeah, I published a series of classes, and one thing on writing, and one thing I stress is that, as you pointed out at the beginning of this interview, it's a long haul. If you keep working at it, you're going to see those numbers go up and up and up and up, and you'll eventually make it. If you don't work at it, they're not going to do that. And Okay. Now, so you live what I call the writing life. You work from home, and you may set your own hours and things. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, I I try to structure my day around like your typical 9 to 5 block.
Mhm.
So I try to be at my desk no later than 9. I'm on the Twitter team for writerunbox.com, so that sometimes means I have to be at my computer a little bit earlier to schedule tweets for Writer Unboxed. And But 9 is usually what I shoot for, and then I spend my morning doing my what I call my desk work. So that's checking my email, checking to see where I am in sales, researching any kind of uh, contests or prepping for an upcoming event or things of that nature.
Mhm.
And then the afternoon is what I reserve for writing. And I usually try to clock off at 5 o'clock, like even if only if I'm like really into a role of writing will I go over that, but I try to walk away from the computer at 5 and then try not to do too much over the weekends. I mean, I'll write on the weekends, of course, but business-wise, avoid that on the weekends just to give myself a break and keep me from getting stressed and give myself some space, sort of thing.
And that's a good point. Writers need to give themselves some time away from writing, or they become introverted into the computer, I found out.
Yeah, it's so easy to get sucked into your own little world and not be able to see beyond it. Adam Driver, who's an actor I really admire, once remarked in an interview that one thing he didn't like about his fame was that he lost his anonymity, his ability to be anonymous, because part of what he feels you do as an actor is you observe the world and you reflect that in your acting. And I thought, well, that's the same thing with writing. You know, you observe the world and you reflect it back in your writing, and you comment on it, or you say what you wish the world was or could be, and you can't do that if you're sucked into a computer 24/7 or into your phone all the time, and you're not interacting with the outside world. You're not going to coffee shops. You're not, or if you do go to a coffee shop, you're so into your laptop you don't overhear the conversations around you. And it's just there's a time when you need to unplug and walk away and turn off your phone and absorb the world around you.
Yes, that's very true. All right, now you said you had some books. Do you have any in front of you that you could show us, your covers and things?
This is my first book, Clara.
Nice cover.
Yes. Yes. So this is the first book of the Stories of Lorst series. And originally the cover was one I had photoshopped myself, and I had actually taken a picture of the Blue Ridge Mountains, which is the mountains I use as inspiration for mountains that are in the book. And that was the cover with like my eyes grayed out over the top, like, you know, like they're seeing over the mountains. It's a really terrible looking cover. And but Fiona came up with this beauty right here. So.
Okay, that's excellent. That's excellent. Where do we find you?
You can find me, well, my website is SuzannaLinton.com. My books are available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kobo, iTunes, or iBooks rather. And then there are a couple of smaller, smaller websites that where I'm available, but those are the big ones that I can think of off the top of my head.
Good. Any closing remarks?
Only thank you for having me, and this is a lot of fun, and I appreciate it.
Oh, you're very welcome. This is a lot of fun. I get to meet new authors all the time, and it's very enlightening. And I enjoyed this interview a lot. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
All right. All right. So this has been Author Talk with Richard Lowe, and I've been interviewing Suzanna Linton. And all of the links to her stuff that we mentioned in the interview are in the description. And please subscribe to and like this particular video, and come back again. Thank you very much.